I requested the number one. It's super interesting.
That's great. That's great. You, oh. Who's had a bad experience with ChatGPT?
Define bad.
Yeah.
Not so good that you, it didn't meet your expectations.
I had one that was very detectable, and I was curious. I was working on a paper on an economic phenomenon called relative price variability, and I asked it, can you give me some sources for this? And what it will do is it will take authors who have written on these sources, realistic sounding titles, journals where it might have been published, and make up citations. Then if you go look at the journal, they're not there. That was classic hallucinations. Now detectable, but maybe students wouldn't detect that.
Right, right.
I created case studies in it using certain pathologies or conditions, and one I asked it to do, and I knew this was a possibility, so it says you have to check carefully. I did atypical MI, myocardial infarction case study that I created, and it gave me all the typical signs and symptoms instead of atypical, so you have to be careful, but I plan to use that in class for them to find out what's wrong with it, so I'm flipping it.
You can paint the software that if you keep insisting A is B, then later they will use that as a source. And even A is not B. So that's a typical thing. You keep insisting this is right, and then educate that, and then later they will accept.
Yeah,
You don't want to fight.
yeah, you train it. They call that prompting. So you can train it.
I use it, because I think it's a fabulous tool, but it is very verbose and overwrites simple messages. And so I find that fascinating, but it's clearly not how I speak. And so I just check it all the time. I'm checking things all the time to see what it will do. And our team has done a lot of work, with AI, so, yeah.
It's good. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead, Rob. Go ahead.
It was kind of on the same note as that. When it comes to verbose things,
Yeah.
it made it very easy to detect when students were using it for short answer questions. The answers some students have given me looked like synthetic is the best way I can think of. And I just copied the answer to ChatGPT and asked, did you write this? And it said, yes, I wrote that, exclamation point.
But would it say no?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it was on. Maybe it will eventually,
I don't know.
but this was
Would it say
early
no?
enough and it was a novel new thing and it was at the time detectable. Maybe that won't work anymore.
Turn it in.
Well, they,
Capture 98% of the AI created certain time.
well, OpenAI discontinued their AI detector because it wasn't effective in checking.
Go ahead. Wasn't necessarily my bad experience with it, but similar to Robert, I was reading in the headlines that a lawyer got suspended for submitting the brief that he did through AI and didn't do the editing like you were talking about in your slides, and it hallucinated cases. And he got suspended from the bar for doing it. So I can see how if you just think, oh, this is the answer, and you just turn it in without doing any kind of the editing, examining, it doesn't do it all.
Yeah, it doesn't do it all, and that's important. So, it can be helpful as far as productivity, but if you don't understand what it's putting out, it can be harmful to you as well.
You
Oh,
somehow, you're out of the presentation, not quite sure how you did that. Now you're there.
okay.
Okay. So we want to take, based on your experiences and then based on some of the information that you have read, and just overall some of the information that's been shared today. One more slide. We want to have a conversation questions. And I'm gonna have Empon pop one more slide so we can get you into a Padlet. Oh, you didn't move the slides around. Yep, that one. If you go to this QR code, Padlet, I think Lauren used it yesterday when we were in her session. It's just a digital whiteboard where you can add your thoughts. So I want you to have conversations around the questions that Empon's going to put back up after you give them a minute to get into that. But we want to know where your questions are. There's a lot of people in the room. We obviously can't have a conversation with everybody all at once. You guys can talk to each other. But we want to capture some of those questions because as we said at the beginning, this is the start of a conversation. So where are we going to start planning and focusing based on what faculty and staff would like us to focus on? So go to the Padlet. MFON's going to pop back to the other slide that has the questions on it. Go back 2 slides. One more slide. And we're going to let you have a conversation around these questions for a few minutes. So find your next best friend, partner who you have to talk to all summer, quickly catch up and have conversations around what do you already know about this in text generators? How do we teach our students about it? So what are some of those ideas that you're percolating in your head on how you're working with students? Where are you landing with affordances and constraints and ethical use? What's your acknowledgement of those? How are you working with the acknowledgement of materials? What are your ideas and thoughts around how we teach? And how do we set institutional use guidelines while leaving room for that discipline? So kind of marinate on these questions and have a conversation on 1, 2, 3 of them, and then add more thoughts and or questions that you have to that Padlet so we can continue to have these conversations and build that knowledge bank. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to let everybody know that my 4160 internship class focused on AI. These are future writing center consultant students, and they did a group project. They did a survey on campus of students asking them if they used AI, and they said no. And then they said unofficially yes all the time, but we're terrified of admitting that we are using it. So this is something to be aware of. They know about it. They are using it. I was approached by RAs yesterday and was told that they've been told that there is an AI detector that the university is using. They were told, I don't know who told them that, but I don't have, so yeah, go ahead, Cynthia.
So first, there is no effective AI detector.
Exactly.
Right, so that is not because ChatGPT and the other large language models don't copy material, which is what your plagiarism detectors look for. They predict what would come next. So and there's already enough research out there on when plagiarism detectors like Turnitin are wrong, right? So they're not running as AI detectors. And that's why one of the reasons behind this session is to get our heads around how do we move away from policing, because you can't put this toothpaste back in the tube. I did try to use Dolly, which is an AI image generator yesterday, to give me a nice image of, or the other day, putting toothpaste back in the tube. It failed miserably. So that's why the robot is on the screen, not the toothpaste being forced back into the tube. So the university does have a subscription to Turnitin. It's available, but there's all kinds of reasons, just like plagiarism detectors are not the answer to helping your students understand how to write and credit sources appropriately. AI detectors can't be depended on to do what you need to do. So we don't have an AI detector because one doesn't exist.
That's what I told the students.
So let's let everybody have a couple minutes to marinate and talk on these, and then we will come back whole group and share. So take a few minutes to think about and have a conversation around and log your questions that you
And, like I said, I know it's very negative, but I find that you're not gonna do work when it's been feeling because of it. So I'm not one to do it. I used to look, it's great. I think it's hard to reality is.
Questions down, these are questions that you want us to have discussed later because we don't have time now, or about something somebody says while they're talking and it prompts questions in your brain, you can continue to ask. But some thoughts around this, like you have a aha moment or a really big thing you want to share about any of these things. We're not necessarily going to do them all in order because we want to make sure that we allow time for MPON to do sharing some additional information, plus do that demo piece that ES built in. Just a couple quick short things.
One of the things I think that AI, like ChatGPT might be really helpful with is that using it as the advanced search function for like Pubmed, just learning the Boolean terms or whatever AI would call that. And then that could give us a whole lot of references. And, everyone here in grad school spent weeks doing their literature review, right? About how quickly AI could do that, and then let us get on to the real meat and potatoes of what we're trying to accomplish. Because I did not go to grad school to learn how to do a literature search, right? I wanted to do something else.
Someone else.
Was it, and then
So here's another few.
Yeah.
So talking about AI, so if someone has already written a paper, maybe thinking through, that's not maybe the best way I could have conveyed that, using it for a revision tool. But also showing students how to do that, when the right time to do that, rather than just throwing them in and saying, yeah, you can use AI effectively, but you have to be able to try to demonstrate that and walk through the steps and show.
Key thing, showing students how to use it and when to use it appropriately so that we don't disrupt the cognitive, like, we're all about thinking and learning and how. We've been using technology to answer questions for years. So I don't know how to do something, I can Google it. It's a phrase in our world. This does it maybe faster, a little more elegantly. I don't have to, but I need to know when it produces, I'm not getting the brief that gets me fired from my law job. I'm aligning what I want my students to know, and it is accurate and it's improving. So that when, and build it in intentionally into our work. Michael.
So I had a class last semester with take-home essays, and going into the semester, I didn't know that Turnitin had that option. I found it at the end of the semester, and I was looking at it, just curiosity, how does it do it? And I was looking through, and I had students whose papers had 0%, 3%, 5%, and then I had this one student with 72% AI generated, right? And so then I went back and I looked at her other ones, and there were 4 different essay exams during the semester. And sure enough, each one of those were somewhere between 70 and 90% AI generated. That's the end of the semester for me. This is the first time that I encountered it. And we don't have a policy. The plagiarism, I was looking for plagiarism.
About plagiarism.
It's not plagiarism.
We talked about that yesterday, plagiarism versus academic integrity. And so this falls in academic integrity and what's the ethical use? And so how do we approach that ethical use, and when is it appropriate? When is it not appropriate to use it? It's not plagiarism. There is no way to track this back. You were saying this yesterday. There is no way to track this back to a single source of information because of the way it's pulling the information. So it's not plagiarism, which is a whole different kettle of fish.
And I was gonna say, and there's been cases where it showed up that it was AI generated when it wasn't. So you had those.
Yeah, you
cases
have to be
as well.
really careful.
The interesting thing for her though was all of her, when I went back and looked at all her exams for the semester, they were all between 70 and 100%. And no case was like that.
So either she's really, really good and has the machine, or she was really, really smart and got ahead of the curve and got a grade and we didn't know it.
Like that.
Right.
So, sorry, Diana, you're.
Yeah, so I just in my second year in doctoral school, right? And we're all on the whole ethical use thing, and so I've been doing a lot of lit reviews lately. Yeah, and so now they've been bringing up ChatGPT and doing a lot of videos on how to properly cite it, because they're not saying that it's plagiarism, so they've been saying that it is academic integrity. So whether you are using it or not, they're actually just been teaching us how to properly cite it, and pull it into actually lit reviews. So I find it, at some point in time, I do find it beneficial to use, because I feel like I am spending a lot of time writing lit reviews, and it really is time consuming. It's more good than I do.
Very fast. Sorry, Robert, did you still want to share something, or we can pop back on here? Yeah. Get back to.
That's something that the Writing Center is working on with our citation handouts. We're going to include a section on how to cite AI within the specific documentation guidelines.
So I shared yesterday, and Emfon asked a question just a few minutes ago, well, I can't remember, about positive or beneficial experiences that we've had. and working it with our students. So I shared yesterday in new faculty orientation, those of you who were there, you experienced this a little bit. I have an activity that I do with new faculty. They sit around a chart paper, they write belief statements. I give them this list of things. What do you believe? They write, they talk, they add beliefs. And then as a group, they have to come to consensus on 7 ideas or concepts where their beliefs intersect. Once they identify those 7 concepts, they don't have to write a gist statement, putting those 7 concepts into a 2-3 sentence statement for that group. And then they share out. So everything's going swimmingly. I haven't thought about AI since Zen sent his presentation to me. And I hear giggling over here. And I said, okay, that's so funny. You look like you're having fun. And they said, no, we don't want to tell you. You're not going to like it. Famous last words of a student in a classroom. Now I really want to know. And they said, we want to use AI to write our gist statement because we believe that we'll write it better than we can. And so, but you don't want us to do that. So I didn't tell you you couldn't. I said, do it. But what's going to happen? And they said, well, we're going to have to do it. And then we're going to have to make sure that it does encompass what we as a group are saying. But how do you know the learning happened that you wanted us to do if we did that? And I said, well, everything that leading up to the gist statement is just the final product. Everything I set you up to do in this class, if this were real content, I have tons of evidence that happened inside my classroom on paper, pencil, in a way that, or marker page, tablet, that lets me know where your thinking is. That final statement, okay, it's AI. You let me know. And so thinking about how we shift our teaching and where we are gaining our information and how we set that learning experience up is something that I would like to see us working on as we think about how do we teach students with AI tools, and how would I have, if I had thought about that as being a possibility, how would I have built AI into that lesson as a piece for them to work through? I didn't, and they told me, and it was fine. I'm sorry, Cameron had to say it out.
Sorry, I feel like we're kind of taking it too easily as a given that this isn't plagiarism that we're talking about, because if we talk about plagiarism as representing someone else's work as your own, and let's say you design on your paper and you don't cite it, that's what you're doing, right? Like I get it as a tool, but it's not your work, it's someone else's, some other being's works. I mean, if we're talking about AI, we're talking about artificial intelligence, so we're sort of borderline this thinks for itself, even though I know it really quite doesn't yet, but you know. So it's just, I don't know, I'm just trying to challenge that as not plagiarism.
Plagiarism is coming from something that has already been published, and then we are using it as our own. This would be academic.
No, it's not, because you can plagiarize something that's not published.
Well, okay, but it's already been created. This is new creation. So plagiarism comes from something that's already been created. This is new creation.
Not necessarily. Yeah, how much time has to lapse to make it plagiarism?
I also think that, that's important to consider, so yes, you're representing some, your work as your own, but it's not your own, so it can go under that category. But I also think for this conversation, rather than worrying about which bucket it goes into, I think some of these larger questions are, because it's not just a plagiarism tool. It is a tool for all kinds of things. So how are we getting at, and it's going to be, I'm supposed to be, I'm going to just listen from here, but I'm very interested in that last question. So, right, so from my perspective as a provost, because I know there's things popping up all over. One of the resources links to a group Google Doc from across the nation of what people have put in their syllabi, that people are just posting. This is what I put in my syllabus for this class. This is what I put in my syllabus for this class. But I'm also interested in how do we talk about the use of AI tools and really specifically to start with these large language model tools. For our students, both at the broad institutional level with enough room for disciplinary And even classroom guidance would be different, but still fall within that umbrella. And I also don't believe we're gonna answer these questions today. This is seed planting.
We're not leaving to the answer.
Here, we have to sit here and worry about that. But what I do find interesting is the group yesterday saw this more in the area of academic integrity than in the area of plagiarism because of the way, because of the umbrella. So, regardless, we're gonna take a couple more questions and then Anupam's gonna, or a couple more comments, and then Anupam's gonna move over into additional.
Okay, so I think this is here whether we like it or not, right? We have to face this and deal with it. But the problem I have is like, so for instance, you said, you told the students, oh, I didn't tell you you couldn't use it. And the student's rationale was, oh, it's gonna write my statement better than I can write it. Well, my thought is, if we don't allow them the opportunity to practice and try to write it better, right? And we just let them use AI to write it better, then they'll never learn how to write it better. It's like spell check. I can't spell because I use spell check and I can click, 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 right? I can't add or subtract anymore because I use a calculator, right? And so my fear is that if we don't figure out how to harness this properly, right? And then our students are not going to learn how to think, critically think, analyze, put things together. And I don't know how to let them use it and still teach them how to critically think.
So I think purpose and intent is what you're talking about. My purpose was not teaching how to write a critically important thinking statement. I would never expect the Writing Center to have that same stance on the assignment that I approached. The other lesson out of the assignment that I just did was I did not think about how to handle AI within that scenario. I had not prepared that lesson with that lens. And that was a learning experience to say, oh, maybe I should have. Now, that was not critically important for me to understand, for them to write a grammatically correct sentence. My goal was to get them to think, and all of that thinking had happened here. So the outcome of the sentence was fine. But the key here is, how do we set those guidelines within the confines of the assignment and our purposes? And that's going to look vastly different by assignment, by discipline, by faculty, by time of year in their 4-year, 8-year plans.
So just on the Writing Center, I will say that we're not ignoring this. We've done a lot of work on this. I am not afraid that I will never have to teach students how to use a semicolon again, okay? And it wouldn't hurt my feelings if I never did have to do that. That is not the focus of what we do there. Our focus is on how to get students to think critically. So I see AI, if I get a clean paper, an end paper that I don't have to review commas again, no tears shed here. So the question is, what are we afraid of? What are we afraid of about AI? How do we want to teach students how to use it effectively to extend critical thinking? It's a great brainstorming tool. It is a great, right? It's a great review tool for an end process paper, but we don't want them using it for a final product, right? It's a process tool. So how do we break this down into process? And I will just say, we will be asking students, so we need your help with this. We're going to have to know how you faculty members want your students using it. We will need to know this because we'll be asking this. We have to.
Put that in writing in
Yes.
Canvas for it, because if it's floating, that confuses everyone.
Yes.
That's what I was on a webinar this summer for AI, and that's exactly what it's saying. It's a faculty have to put it in their syllabus to say zero AI, a certain percentage of AI. They also suggested finding ways to confuse AI, asking them about local resources, because it can't do that. It's dated back to 2021. It's not 2023. And also doing certain pieces in class where they can't get around it using the AI. This is a more of a project.
So while we're on that topic of question can you go down 2 slides, and find to the one that has open slide? No, forward. Next slide. This is the document that Suzanne was just referencing, and these are loaded into the SharePoint site. But this is the document this is not a do or don't do document. This is a compilation of it's a high thinking document. It's a compilation of people have put this out here. The Lance Eaton is collecting this as an open space for conversation. So this is not by any means, because it's on this slide, that this is what you should or should not be doing in your classroom. But I've heard it once, I've heard it twice today, and I've heard it multiple times. I don't even know where to start to put something in my classroom. I could ask AI, right? But I want to know what my colleagues out in the field are doing. So this does lead you to a document that has.
ChatGPT will suggest language for your syllabus. It's one of the first things I did, craft a policy around using ChatGPT for, writing, and I got 20 different versions. So it will do that if you ask. But again, just like with all of those things, I wouldn't just take whatever it says for it to plug it down.
It's gonna tell you, but it's also kind of this is the collaboration, because what are my colleagues in different areas thinking?
Go ahead. It's more a question. It's all very new to me, but I'm sure we've all had that classic experience where you're looking at a student's paper, the first paragraph has about 6 vocabulary words that they've never used in their life. We've all had that experience, and that right away stinks. And I say, I know you didn't write this. I was supposed to call them into our office and say, okay, what does juxtaposition mean to you? An obvious word, you've never seen them used one time. What are you supposed to say?
Can I jump in? I'm sorry for talking so much, but I think most of you know that.
I know you're
composition and writing studies is my disciplinary background, right? And as a writing program administrator for a long time. So the thing that I would say, much like as we're talking about with AI, and as educators, in my experience, when students choose to blatantly plagiarize, and that's right, that most often happens out of fear and anxiety, right? So it is almost always, there's the 3% who just don't care, right? But it's a very, very small, and so I think it is always an opportunity. And this is why in the honor code, right, that says the very first conversation is with the faculty member. And if you approach it as that kind of teachable moment, hey, what happened here? This doesn't look, don't make them define words. You say, this doesn't look like any of the other work you have done for me all semester. What's going on, right? Either I didn't know how to do it and I froze and I had to turn something in, or they also tell you, I'm sorry, like your class is the least important class in my schedule. And as a writing teacher, I heard that a lot. And I don't care about your class. I care about these other classes, and I had to get it done. And right. So I think and I think the conversations about AI use are very similar. Hey, you get these citations. Are you aware they sound great? Like, I wish I could for my papers like that, but they don't exist, right? What's going on here? And then give them the path to do it correctly. And I think that's always the first intervention. It's time consuming, right? But it's the best, because we're here to teach. I think it's the best way to approach it. That's true for math and computer science and history and accounting and business and, first, oh, I just decided I didn't care. Well, that's different from, I stared at that assignment for 12 hours straight and couldn't produce a single thing. And I did this. And there are natural consequences. Well, you failed this assignment is a natural consequence. Or you have you've got a chance to try this again if that's the way you function.
These are some of our favorite consultations, by the way. These are, I mean, I love these consultations. You get to have a different conversation and you get to hear what that student knows, right? And then you begin again, you actually move off of any paper that they have and you begin again and you help them with process. It's process, but these are my favorite consultations.
In interest of time, because we are hitting 11:55.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And last one.
Can we get one last?
We can get one last one, but in the interest of time, I'd like to be able to give some of the additional time.
Listening to what everybody said, it occurred to me, and maybe this has already been addressed yesterday, but it occurred to me that if a student pays another student to write a paper for them, they are using that other student's intelligence. If a student uses artificial intelligence to write a paper for them, essentially they're having somebody else write the paper, right? Or take the exam, whether it's artificial intelligence or human intelligence. So maybe we ought to treat those two the same way.
That's why, I think that's why yesterday I felt heavier into the academic integrity versus the plagiarism side. Maybe a cleaner thing in their brains. So.
But I think that was a good point, and conversations like that are happening all over. So for example, a few weeks ago, I was on a webinar with tax accountants. And we were talking about AI. And the question wasn't what it is. The question, some of the questions were, should I disclose to my clients I'm using AI? How do I bill my clients? Should I charge them less because I'm finishing things faster? Should I charge them more money? So those were the questions, because people are using it day to day. I'm going to kind of move through this in essence of time, because I wanted to do a demo, especially to show everyone what the 4.0 looks like. So there are a lot of limitations. We talked about that. There are a lot of concerns with AI, ChatGPT. But the key thing is it's here to stay. So it's not going anywhere. And we have to, I suggest, learn as much as we can about it, understand it, and find ways to embrace it. I give an example here of what an educator can do to use ChatGPT. I use it, I made rubrics with it. You can use it to generate lesson plans or enhance lesson plans or to supplement material. You can use it for feedback, for designing curriculum. You can use it to generate content as well. Yesterday in this session, someone was given an example of how they use it. They use one platform, they upload their content, some of the textbook material, they load that up and they have the students to ask questions based on that material that they've uploaded into AI, the AI platform. This, I wanted to really talk about prompt engineering. This is the key, and I think it was mentioned before. When you think about what you're putting into or the questions you're asking it, the better output you get. And prompting is key to getting better output. So a few weeks ago, there was an article released on how ChatGPT passed the CPA exam. Well, that's what I did. I was laughing. I said, wait a minute. So when you read the research, it did, but it didn't. So, and what I mean by that is tied to this prompting. So if you just copied and pasted a question into 3.5 or 4.0, it wouldn't pass. So what they had to do was what they call 10-shot prompting to get it to pass the CPA exam. And what is this shot? It's not a shotgun, but it's giving examples. So if you just type something in, they call that 0 shot. But if you give it an example of what you want it to do, that's 1 shot. You give it 2 examples, that's 2 shots. So to get it to pass the CPA exam, it had to give it 10 examples of each one of those questions in order for it to get 86%. So there's still some work to be done with it. However, the focus, especially ChatGPT and these platforms, is to reduce the amount of prompting. So they want to make it better. So instead of having to put in 10 prompts, you put in 5, 3, 2, until ultimately you don't need to prompt it at all. We talked about ethics and transparency. I'm going to kind of skip through the Q&A and go to the demo really quick. I want us to at least see what ChatGPT 4 looks like. All right. Let's see if it's okay, I took away my
It's our AI blocker.
you got the AI blocker.
There was an error about the HDMI input, so if it's the HDMI, there's an error about screen.
Unplug it and plug it back in.
Is it on your screen?
It's on this one. It's on my.
There
There it is. We got it back.
Best tech thing ever, unplug or restart.
So I thought this was important because when I saw those hands, I saw some of the hands that used the 3.5. Then I saw a few hands using the 4.0. One thing to remember, so ChatGPT, the 3.5 came out November of last year. Was it November 30th? That version was discontinued in March. So they eliminated that version. So at one point, there were 3 versions. There was the 3.5 free, then the 3.5 turbo. So if you see that little, I guess the green lightning strike, that's the 3.5 turbo, and then the 4.0. So they discontinued that 3.5. And then you have the 3.5 turbo and then the 4.0. Now I have the plus version, which is the paid version. So when you log into the paid version, you'll have access to the 3.5, which everyone has access to for free. Then you got access to the 4.0 version, which they're constantly updating, right? So the last update was August 3rd. So they're working on improving it. And then the next step will be version 5.0. Now, what I wanted to show you is that you have the 3.5 and the 4.0, but also as an add-on, you have the API or the plugin store. So I've got 3 plugins here. You can connect to 3 plugins at a time. In the plugin store, there's over 500 different plugins. Right now, I have it connected to a research database site. So research by vector. Yeah. I also have it connected to Ask Your PDF. This lets you load up PDF documents into ChatGPT for a particular session. So I use it. So for example, I go to the IRS website, download tax code or new tax changes. I upload it into ChatGPT. I can ask it to summarize it or ask it questions on that particular item. So you can upload it there. The other one that I have in here is, and we were talking about this yesterday, is scholarly AI. So this connects it to, it says 40 million plus peer-reviewed papers. So I think we were talking about lit review and we were talking about, I think yesterday about peer-reviewed papers. I can ask it questions and it can pull this up from this database. The other thing I wanted to, if I can get into, if you go to the plugin store, and I call it the app store, but these are actually plugins. You can search through the plugins. You can go through all of the various plugins here. So if you want something on research, you can pull it up. Yes.
Is there anything for, employers with
Or I can hear.
Yeah.
Math, I'm not sure. We can find that.
And also, how much are these plugins?
Well, plugins are free. So you get access to, so that's what I was mentioning. Bless you. So with the plus version, so when you pay the $20 per month, you get the 3.5, you get the 4.0, and then you get access to the plugins. So it's added in, so it doesn't cost you. So there's Mixer Box. There's another, so there's two plugins for that in here already. So this is what's here now. So if you think about, if you just started playing with the 3.5, the older version, that was then, but this is what everyone has access to now. And it's only improving and increasing as we move forward. I guess we've got a few minutes. Any questions?
Make something for us.
Is this tax deductible? This would be tax deductible. It's a work expense, right?
I wish. I wish. What did you want me to make? What did you want me to make?
What do you want to make?
I don't know, make like something like a rubric. Can you make a rubric real quick?
For what part?
For pharmacology and nursing, I don't know. Something like that for a nursing paper.
Oh, I think that error. It doesn't like it.
You broke it already.
We broke the,
I think that's a.
Okay, make a nursing care plan, they say. Can we make a nursing care plan?
It's about the prompting too. So if the students still have the understanding of the concept, they're not going to be able to ask it to do what you want it to do. I was telling Cameron yesterday, my daughter had an English assignment and at 9:30 at night, she asked me to do it while I was not home yet. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm exhausted and I don't know anything about, well, it was two. One was the poem I shared with you. The other one was here's the scenario. You walk home from school and then your room's a mess, right? What happened in passive voice? And then rewrite it in active voice. One, I always write in passive voice. I don't know how to do active voice. So we asked ChatGPT to do active voice. It did great. I asked it to do passive voice and it didn't do it. It told me that I needed to start over and how to make it work. So I wasn't savvy enough in my prompting to get what I wanted.
I was gonna say, can we have do you have any guidance on how to write good prompts? how to write prompts that will help us get the information we're looking
If you
for.
be more specific, you get a better.
I'm gonna,
Well,
sure I can, yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, like, are there like Boolean phrases that we might apply, something like that?
Yeah.
To narrow it down.
I can give an example, and it's not. I used ChatGPT to write award ceremony reports that I was giving for program. And so there was a new award that we were giving. So I said, write oral remarks to present this particular award. And I gave the criteria for the award. And it gave me a little speech. And I said, now start it with a joke. And then I said, now make it the winner of the award, very dedicated and passionate about something in particular. And I was able to kind of put some things to make it more personalized to the person who was getting it. Right, so I just did that 2 or 3 times and it would revise it based.
yeah, that's good. There's different methods. So one way is talking to it. So asking, like I was typing the care plan, can you write a care plan? It wrote the care plan. Is there anything else? Am I missing something? So you can ask it questions to get it to go further. The other is to give it exact examples, what you're trying to.
Make it from the emergency.
Yeah, yeah, if you had a care, this was a nursing care plan. If I had an example of a nursing care plan and I put it in there, and then I asked it to tailor the nursing care plan based on that care plan, it would do that, and you would get better output.
And you would put one in like by PDF using your plugin. So you can upload the PDF of the care plan, then it would analyze that, and then it could make one similar with change.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, this is a Pandora's box that we are logging through. And it's very different for the discipline and the students that you are teaching, based on where you are. But it's not unlike some of the questions and the quandaries that we've had for years. Michael wrote my paper. Did anybody know Michael wrote it? Yeah, probably because he knows me well enough that I won't use juxtaposition ever, right? So, I bought a paper. Did we figure out that somebody bought a paper off a paper buying site somewhere? You know, we've been dealing with the same conversation around and around. So I think we really are it's just now, like Evan said, it was the 10-year rule. It's going faster and faster and faster. And how do we want to talk to our students and make this part of who we are, and how do we embrace it? Because obviously we all come to the realization we can't fight it. Bunch of resources everyone has in the presentation. It has been loaded up into the team site, and he's gonna go over those real quick for you.
Yeah, and one thing to remember, we're just talking about ChatGPT. So their biggest competitor is Anthropic's Claude 2, which you don't need an API, you can just upload things directly to Claude 2. We were talking about Turnitin. Turnitin is partnered with an AI company called Cactus. So, and I've listed this here. So I've got a slew of terms of interest, links, websites you can go to find out more information on AI in general. And this is a good resource on prompts. So this is here as well, if you have questions about prompts. There's some resources for higher ed. And these are interviews with, some of these are interviews with the CEO of OpenAI. Here's a list of AI platforms for music, writing. Could be added. A lot more can be added to it. Like I mentioned before, I've got Claude on there as well. So you can go in here and kind of check these out.
I have to give a shout out to Otter AI because I've been using it for years. If you have to transcribe interviews for any of your research, Otter AI is amazing.
It is 12:14. Thank you for your time. That, if you have more questions, you know how to reach us, and we'll see you at the next session. Enjoy. Thank you.